Hey everyone. Every once in a while your brakes might get squishy, might get soft. There's a great way to fix that. I recently installed some Hope brakes, and it's a very common problem on Hope brakes for the brakes to be kind of squishy or kind of loose. And it's almost always because there are bubbles inside the system, air bubbles. And you can't have air bubbles inside there if you want solid braking, because the whole point of brake fluid is it doesn't compress, it doesn't expand very much at all. Air compresses and expands quite a bit, so you got to get the air bubble out of there if you want your brakes to work really well. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to do it on Hope brakes, which are particularly prone to this problem. There's all kinds of forum chatter about this. And all sorts of groups on Facebook and whatnot.
All right, so for this job, you're gonna need a stand because we're gonna set the bike up kind of like this in order to get those bleed ports as high up as possible. A bleed kit, you can go pretty cheap with that. Brake block for the brakes. You need some brake fluid. Yeah, I have .4 fluid. You need some brake cleaner or rubbing alcohol. I like to put it in a spray bottle. You need some gloves when you're dealing with .4 fluid or .5 fluid, whatever you like to use. You need one of these little wrenches. Also need a 3mm to remove that screw. Okay, first things first, what we got to do is we've got to prepare the stand. So we're gonna undo that. We're gonna open up clamp. I'm going to put the bleed kit together. We've got a nice syringe. After I've put my gloves on, of course. With some brake fluid. You just need a little bit, and what you're going to do is you're going to kind of, just as like a doctor would at a hospital, you're going to get all the air out of the syringe by pushing it up. You're going to push a little bit out into a cloth or paper towel, and we're going to spray a little alcohol cleaner on the gloves. Make sure everything's clean. Spray a little on the side of the syringe to make sure that we don't have any kind of squishiness going on, because we're going to stick this right on this bleed port here. You're going to take this pin off here, and the way you take it off is you sort of, on Hope brakes, it's a little different. You have to sort of twist this thing. You have to be very careful so it doesn't fall on the ground, because they're very difficult to find, especially on my garage. We'll just set it down. Sort of looks like that. Almost like a music note. And it sort of twists on and twists off. Once that's off, once that clamp is off, you can undo that 3mm. Okay. Keep those together. And then just pull the pads out. And what I like to do is I like to mark the outside pad with a little magic marker, so that we don't lose track of which brake pad is on the inside and which brake pad's on the outside. With your brakes out, it's not a bad idea to clean things to take this piece off before we go any further. Next up, we're just going to put the bleed block in. I use a zip tie usually to secure it up. There you go. Step one is going to be, we're going to stick the syringe on the bleed port. All right. And it's on there pretty tight. It's on there pretty good. Then what we're going to do is take our little wrench here. That's the wrong way. We're going to go counterclockwise, quarter turn to open the system. And now all we're going to do is we're going to try to suck up the air bubbles that are in the system into the syringe. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to pull on the syringe. And what you're hopefully going to see is a bunch of bubbles, and indeed that's exactly what we're seeing, come out into this syringe. We're going to make sure it's on there nice and tight and that nothing is uneven, because remember, we're not using the official attachment, so we got to be kind of careful. And you can see all the air bubbles rising up through the system into the syringe, never to return, hopefully. We'll push some of the fluid back into the system, making sure no air bubbles are getting back into the system. You don't want to push too much, you don't want to push too hard, because you can force fluid up through your reservoir on the top of your brake. And we'll do it again. Let's see if more air bubbles come up. And gosh, it sure looks like they are. Now what we're going to do, before we finish, is we're going to jiggle the lines, the brake lines, to try to make sure we get any air bubbles out of the system, if at all possible. And with one hand, I'm sort of holding the syringe up top so I don't get so I don't spill brake fluid all over myself. And what I'm just going to do is I'm going to flick the brake lever a little bit and kind of move it back and forth. Make sure there's no air bubbles in there. Flick the bottom line one more time. Once you can see they're still coming. We don't want too much pressure inside the system. We don't want to overfill it. It's very easy to do it using this method. So what we're going to do is we're going to pump the brake a bunch of times. And I am actually seeing some bubbles come out. So anyway, you want to rinse and repeat until you've got no more air bubbles coming out. And you're going to just kind of close this up, give a quarter turn back clockwise, close it up. Make sure, clip this. Get some stuff off camera. So we're going to clip this. Then take a paper towel, spray a little alcohol on it, and remove the tube from the bleed port. Try to get as little brake fluid in as few places as is possible. Then we're going to twist up the end of this paper towel stick it in the little bleed port. Try to soak up as much of the .3 fluid as we can. Just look at how much air we got out of that system. I'm gonna set aside the bleed syringe for later in case I need to do this again or I need to add or remove fluid. I'm gonna first stick this little rubber piece back on the bleed port so we don't lose it. Very easy to lose these things. And then with the system closed, I'll pump the brakes just to make sure things are solid, and they are. Clip this zip tie off of here. Get the bleed block out. I think I'll give the brakes a quick spray with a different towel and brake cleaner. The outside brake that I marked earlier, facing out. Gonna line up the spring just right, and we'll stick them back in. Take a quick look to make sure that the gap looks about right, and it does. It's the gap between the pads. See? Looks pretty good. Then I'm just gonna take that screw with my 3mm Allen key, put it right through the brake pads, the spring, screw it back in, and then we'll put that clip through the hole on the end, a little music note clip that we removed earlier. Try to do this so folks can see, but it might not work perfectly. You have to twist it as you push it in for the whole clip and make sure it's not coming out. Now, all I've done is I've put my rear wheel on, because we're going to test brake really quick before we do too much more. Make sure that the feel is good. We'll pump it a couple times first. Yeah, and that feels great. Make sure to dispose of your dot fluid, if you're using dot fluid, properly. What I do is I have a little bottle of salsa. I put the old brake fluid in when I'm done bleeding or when I'm done with whatever, and every once in a while I take this to my local bike shop and they dispose of it for me. And there you have it. The brakes perform so much better now. It's ridiculous. I have another bike that I put Hope brakes on, and I rode it today. It was just awesome. Like the stopping power is fantastic on Hope brakes, and once you get the air out of the system, the feel is so much stiffer and cleaner and less spongy. You've got immediate stopping power and just a tremendous amount of power with these brakes. All right, go out there and enjoy long days at the park and long downhill runs with your newly responsive Hope brakes.